Truth, then, like goodness, is a purely subjective quantity, a reflection not of the world, but of our psychological state in the current moment. Since there is no objective good, the public good is arbitrated by markets, either by the political market on the basis of one man, one vote, or by the economic market on the basis of $1, one vote. The sum total of our purchases in these markets equals the sum total of the good. And the good has no other content than that which is purchased. All that is necessary is free political and economic markets, and the good will take care of itself. Or as G.K. Chesterton put it, this theory states that the good will take care of itself if only people are sufficiently greedy for the goods. Let me briefly critique this public orthodoxy on two grounds. The first is that self-interest cannot add up to a public good for the simple reason that it cannot add up to a private good. Self-interest is not something that is known in advance. It is discovered in the process of living. Certainly, we may know what we want, but wanting a thing is no guarantee that it is in our self-interest. A child frequently cannot see why cleaning his room, rather than delegating the task to his mother, might be in his self-interest. The mother might be inclined to give a lecture on the development of good habits of self-reliance and responsibility, but this lecture might as well be in a foreign language. Hence, she will resort to that universal reason of all parents, because I said so. Let me suggest that we are all like children. And must somehow bow to an authority that we trust, even when we cannot give the reasons for doing so. But the greater problem is that such liberalism cannot deliver on its promise of liberty, for the simple reason that it cannot define the term. Or rather, it defines liberty in a purely negative sense, as simply the absence of coercion when making choices. That is to say, it confuses liberty with license. But while this definition may be sufficient for free choice, it is insufficient for freedom. Freedom directs our actions to the good. And without that direction, freedom collapses in on itself to become slavery. Let me give a concrete example. Now, we may all choose to take our cocaine in crack or in powdered form. It's a free choice. It's a market choice. You simply compare the price and utilities of each with your own self-interest and make a market choice. However, while it may be a free choice, it is not a choice of freedom. Either choice leads to slavery. Man's freedom is paradoxical, unlike God's freedom. God exercises pure freedom, always directed to the good. But man's freedom includes unfreedom, includes choices which would deprive him of freedom. And this is the conundrum of liberalism, which in reducing freedom to choice, to mere license, destroys freedom itself. Now, I do not want anyone to think that I am engaging here in a pure partisan rant. All my rants are strictly nonpartisan. The truth is that this liberalism is the dialogue of both the right and the left. And free choice is their common thread, their only shared definition of the good. So on the left, we have a social libertarianism, which defines abortion, sexual orientation, marriage, and all social associations in terms of free choices, the value which trumps all other values. And on the right, we have an economic libertarianism, which idolizes the market and resents any limits that might be placed on it. Hence, we find ourselves crushed between big business and big government, two entities which have between them reached a happy concordant and exercise a monopoly of power over every other public institution, and indeed over every aspect of our lives. But monopolies of power always end up destroying themselves. And I believe that is where we find ourselves today. The old order, actually disorder, is passing. What will replace it? That, I suggest, is up to us. As members in good standing of the priesthood of the people, the task of rebuilding the social order is our task. And I suggest that it is a task of practical evangelization. That is, an evangelization that is not so much about preaching as about practice. Or as St. Francis of Assisi put it, preach the gospel always. Use words if necessary. Now, I'm going to look at this question of rebuilding through the lens of the latest social encyclical, Caritas in Veritate, which is itself the culmination of more than a century of constant papal teaching on the social and economic orders. Father Sweeney referred to this teaching as the Church's secret weapon, which it is. The problem is, it's just too dang much of a secret. Catholic social teaching has been, as it were, in the closet, and has difficulty showing itself in a culture which is so dominated by liberalism and individualism. If the social teaching is indeed our secret weapon, that we might consider Caritas in Veritate as our theological weapon of mass destruction, sweeping away a naive individualism. And this is because it exceeds all the other social encyclicals, in my opinion, by insisting that a proper economics is based not only on the natural virtue of justice, but on the supernatural virtue of love, caritas. Justice is, of course, a part of love. You cannot be said to love somebody and then treat them unjustly. But no other encyclical has gone as far in asserting the primacy of love as a practical consideration of economics and social life. What Benedict does is to bring us face to face with Tina Turner's great question, what's love got to do with it? Now, the sheer scope of this encyclical is somewhat daunting. In 54 pages, the Pope tackles issues of globalization, financial speculation, outsourcing, inequality, migration, technology, patent law, ecology, and the list goes on. But perhaps the best way of getting a handle on all this is to recognize that Benedict is reviving the thought of his predecessor, Pope Paul VI, who was the pontiff at the close of the Second Vatican Council. Paul wrote two highly controversial encyclicals, which between them managed to anger both the left and the right. I always think it's a good sign when you can manage to anger both the left and the right, you know.